Hey, this is Warren Redlick. This is going to be a little bit different. I want to do kind of a free form. I've got this idea in my head. I'm going to call it Elonopoly. Talk about what Elon does or something in particular that Elon does. It's we see at Tesla, we see at SpaceX. I think we're going to see it at Neuralink and the Boring Company. I think Twitter may even fit into this idea. Elonopolies. Are you ready? Let's go. There's something special about what Elon has been doing with Tesla and SpaceX in particular. And like I said, I think we're going to see it with his other companies. Very, very large investments, very, very big goals, which, he just takes off a big problem and he makes a huge effort to achieve it. You see it with creating electric cars and manufacturing them efficiently so you can make them in high volume at low cost. There's the robo-taxi idea, the real-world artificial intelligence idea. There's reusing rocket boosters at SpaceX. And what these all lead to is you end up becoming the market leader. You become the first mover in creating what is effectively a new market, whether it's an electric vehicle market, especially a robo-taxi market, a bot market, and being a first mover in launch services at very, very low cost, much lower cost than before. We see this with Starlink as well, with the Starlink satellite network. Taking on a really big project that has a very high upfront cost, trying to do it as efficiently as possible so you make that cost manageable. And you get to the point, this is the key now, you get to the point where you achieve a dominant position in that market. Now, Tesla's not there yet with a dominant position in the car market. SpaceX is there with a dominant position in launch services. Starlink is pretty much approaching what will be a dominant position in internet service provider from space to locations that don't have access to regular ground-based internet. Neuralink is probably going to be the first to achieve brain implants that allow you to interact with a digital world at scale. Boring Company, its tunneling is not new, but tunneling at low cost and coming up with a systematic way to build tunnels and use them at much lower cost to the customer. Some key things here are providing something that's different, that's reasonably low cost to the customer, that costs you less to build or provide. And what ends up happening, so number one, you get to this dominant position, and what happens is, imagine that somebody says, well, okay, the competition is coming. Really, is the competition coming? If it takes a really, really substantial investment to get to this point in the market, and at that position, with one company leading that market with a dominant position without a lot of significant competition, as long as they keep their prices reasonable to the customer, but significantly above their cost, it's a money printing machine. Now, if you decided, I want to compete with those guys, you now have to invest billions of dollars to achieve some level of getting close to what those guys are doing. And remember, Elon's companies don't stop innovating, so you're probably not going to catch up to them, but getting to the point where you can be the second player in that market. And when you get there, your costs are going to be higher than their costs. Because your costs are higher than their costs, it's going to be difficult for you to undercut them on price. If you succeed, you end up with a competitive marketplace and prices fall, so profits are low. So why invest the money? You're not going to get your return on investment. This is the fundamental issue that I have in my head about this video, is that if you can achieve a dominant market position in a business where there's a very high cost of entry, right? Building large factories to build electric vehicles is a very high cost of entry. Creating an artificial intelligence that requires having millions of cars driving on the roads with cameras and building an artificial intelligence training supercomputer or supercomputers and deploying, hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people to work on this system, that the huge investment that's being made to develop this real world AI system, it's not like you're just going to take the CD and copy the program. If you're going to compete with Tesla in real world AI, you're going to have to make the same investment. Now, over time, as general technology surrounding artificial intelligence improves, it may become easier to get there, but it's never going to be easy. Not for years. And so these monopolies, Elonopolies that Elon is creating, they won't be monopolies forever, and they're not true monopolies. So like Starlink is not a true monopoly, an internet service provider, because You have cell phone networks and you have land-based, ground-based internet service providers, but there are customers who don't really have good cell phone connections and don't really have access to ground-based internet. And there are other satellite internet companies, but they're just not comparable. The latency and the bandwidth are terrible, and they're very expensive. So you end up with this sort of dominant market position in a certain space. The robotaxi network is going to be massively profitable, and people who first say, well, Tesla can't do it, second say, well, if Tesla does it, somebody else will do it next, ignores the fact that in order to do what Tesla is doing, you have to make that massive capital investment. And if you make that massive capital investment, you're probably not going to get a return on that investment. In other words, Tesla is making this big investment, but they're already seeing a return on their investment. They're already making substantial profits. Gross margins are high. As they roll out, if they can achieve robotaxi, full self-driving cars that don't need a driver, even paying attention, and then creating a robotaxi service, the profits are off the charts. If somebody came along and created a second robotaxi service, then price competition would immediately erode the profits. Tesla would just lower their prices to the point where they're competitive with whatever you're doing, and you're making less money than they are if you're making any money at all. What SpaceX did with reusing orbital rocket boosters is a great example of this. They're reusing orbital rocket boosters. This dramatically reduces their cost of launching payloads into space. They're able to provide launch services cheaper than anyone else. They first landed a rocket booster propulsively in December of 2015, more than 6 years ago, and no one else has even tried. And you think about the amount of money and the amount of engineering. Now, keep in mind, SpaceX did not have a lot of money at that time. So the cost of doing that would probably be fairly low, in the low billions, $1 to $10 billion to achieve that goal. The problem is the profit side of the story isn't there for somebody who says, I want to do what Elon did. So Jeff Bezos has his Blue Origin project, and it's going kind of slow. I think the other thing is it's not that easy. Elon is a brilliant engineer, and he's the engineer at the top of the team, and he's able to drive innovation faster than someone else who's trying to do this. So Elon's cost for developing reusable rockets is lower than somebody else's cost. Even though we already know how to do it, and all the next company has to do is hire SpaceX engineers who retired or buy them out and pay them some extra money, you could probably achieve it. But what's the profit story at the end of the day when you invest billions of dollars to achieve this? Where's the profit out of this? If SpaceX has already developed even better technology, so Starship has lowered the cost of launching payloads into orbit by another, factor of 10, by another order of magnitude. In other words, it used to be that the cost of getting a payload in orbit was $10,000 per kilogram to low Earth orbit. And then SpaceX got it down to $1,000 per kilogram to low Earth orbit. Starship's going to get it down to around $20 per kilogram to low Earth orbit. If you come along and you innovate to get to where SpaceX is now, you get to $1,000 per kilogram to low Earth orbit or $100 per kilogram to low Earth orbit, and SpaceX is already at $20 per kilogram, then when you try to compete on price, they can undercut you. They'll probably let you make a little bit of profit just to not appear to be a monopoly, but they're going to be making outsized profits. They're going to have more customers. Just want to mention, by the way, that there's a book that you should read if you're interested in this topic. Peter Thiel was with Elon at PayPal. Not sure if they're friends. I don't know how well they get along. I don't know if the PayPal breakup was that great, but they seem to think alike. And they seem to some extent at least, it seems like Peter Thiel appreciates what Elon's doing. So I recommend this book. I'll put a link to it here. Definitely worth reading. I'm not saying it's everything. And I want to, say that like I have my own ideas for a startup. I'm going to create a single passenger car that would be optimal for the robotaxi network or optimal for the Boring Company tunnels. I don't expect to have this Elonopoly with this project because I'm not investing that much. I'm not creating something that's that special. It's going to be pretty easy to emulate what I do. Hopefully, I'll become a player in the market and I'll be able to have some level of success and somewhat level of wealth as a result of it, but I don't expect to become a billionaire through this. I wouldn't mind, don't get me wrong. But, I'm not going to become, fabulously wealthy like Elon or Jeff Bezos. Amazon's another example. They created this e-commerce platform. Anybody can create an e-commerce platform, but so far nobody's knocking them off the top of the peg. And Amazon didn't just create an e-commerce platform, develop critical mass, and that was it. They're constantly innovating. They're innovating on logistics. They're innovating on your interaction with the page to redesign the page of every page of the site so that you're more likely to click on the buy button, so that they're going to show you products that you're more likely to buy. There's a huge amount of innovation there. And the acquisition of Twitter, if Elon's going to go ahead and acquire Twitter or get a controlling interest in Twitter, Twitter already has that critical mass. It already has a sort of dominant market position, in a sense, in the area of social media. There are other social media websites, so it's not a true monopoly. But if they can create a more compelling platform that makes more people want to use it, makes them want to use it longer, and provides them with more things, and maybe offer online shopping as a possibility, not to become a dominant online e-commerce platform, but to nibble away at Amazon and maybe make some extra profits from it. To offer video services, comparable to what YouTube is doing, and maybe you can nibble away there, and maybe you grow, and maybe Elon's going to find a way to monetize this platform that Twitter so far has failed to monetize. And I don't think he needs a controlling interest. He needs to have a business plan that he can go to the institutional investors and say, hey, listen, I can make Twitter 5x. I can make Twitter 10x from where it is now. This is the plan. Put my people in charge. I think there's something there. So I just wanted to tie this together. This is to me, this is a big idea. I see this. There's also, you should take a look at Tim Urban's Wait But Why blog, WaitButWhy. If you search for Wait But Why Elon Musk, you'll see that he has posts. He does these long-form blog posts talking about different topics, and he did, I think it was a 3 or 4-parter about Elon Musk. And it's really worth reading that to get an understanding of what Elon does. Enter an industry where you can 10x, where you can do something 10 times better than what's being done before. That's what they're doing in tunneling with Boring Company. With Neuralink, nobody's even doing it. With Starlink, yeah, there's internet service providers with satellites, but Elon's figured out a way, let's do internet service provision in a much more efficient way that reaches a lot more people and delivers them a lot better service. Tesla taking EVs and making EVs better than internal combustion engine cars, making them a lot better than internal combustion engine cars, and then coming up with this robotaxi network idea that will basically change transportation as we know it. Huge ideas, a lot of great things. The Mars mission, I suppose if you create a culture on another planet, you create a civilization on another planet, and you are the dominant provider of transportation services between the planets, it's going to be hard for somebody else to compete with that. I don't know that I don't think Mars is really about making money for Elon. I don't know if any of this is really about making money. This is really about doing things that make the world a better place and making money while you do it, and using that money to do more things that make the world a better place. It's absolutely genius. It's absolutely spectacular. It's insanely gigantic. You can get the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Support this channel on the Locals platform. Check out my other videos. And thank you so much for watching.